Queen Sheba. Today's guest is the poet who founded Poetry vs. Hip Hop Live and the Poetry vs. Hip Hop Foundation that supports LGBTQ women of color navigating their cancer journey. The award-winning poet is also an author and a professor. She'll share insights about her work and her superpower. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe. Welcome to the Superpowers for Good show, where we empower you. Sheba, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It's so good to see you again.
It's great to see you too, Devin. How have you been?
I'm thrown. They asked me a question. I'm the interviewer, but no, I'm doing great. But I just actually finished recording about 10 minutes ago with our friend Dilla. And so I'm thrilled now to have a chance to connect with you and record with you. Of course, we won't share these necessarily back to back 10 minutes apart, but we will share them. And I'm excited to do that. But you and I had
change coming from Israel.
Oh yeah. The highlight of the Israel trip for me was not Israel. We saw amazing things, and I'm so grateful to our hosts for all that they did to educate us and share with us. I had never visited Yad Vashem. I was deeply moved by that. And,
yes.
But really, for me, the highlight was making some new friends, the people that I traveled with, that you and I traveled with. And so, I am so eager to count you as a lifelong friend.
Oh my God. Yes, absolutely. So we're friends forever.
Good. And I'm grateful for that. So I'm eager to share a little bit of you, a little piece of you with my community. But tell us a little bit about your work with Poetry versus Hip Hop.
Okay. So to save the long backstory, but Poetry versus Hip Hop is a social impact platform disguised as a stage show. And the reason I say disguised as is because people don't necessarily understand what we're doing in the background to connect genres and people that would not have necessarily sat together in the lunchroom or would not have necessarily did a show together or did community service together, or they wouldn't necessarily have called each other on the phone. So in the background of Poetry versus Hip Hop stage show, we purposely reach out to people that are from all walks of life, including but not limited to any race, color, creed, LGBTQIA community, anything at all, so that we can bridge these gaps and start conversations with people to help dissolve stereotypes, to help people understand different cultures, to maybe introduce them to cultures they have never seen or talked to before or worked with before. And that's really important to me as a woman of color and of multi cultures within myself, to introduce people to each other. And I like to consider myself a bit of a conduit. So that's what happens in the background of Poetry versus Hip Hop. And with that, just like our trip to Israel, people leave forever changed. They leave saying, oh, I didn't even know so-and-so was a hip hop artist. I didn't even know they were a writer. I didn't even know they were a journalist. I didn't even know they were a singer. I need to work with them. And amazing friendships, lifelong friendships have come out of that. We've actually had some discourse. We've had, there was one time that in Texas, I won't say which city, because we've been to Austin, Dallas, and Houston, but there was a kind of a hip hop gang rival where the hip hop artists were like, no, I'm not working with so-and-so because they run with such and such crew. And then we had to sit them down and say, hey, and this is all behind the scenes, like nobody knows this is going on. So we had to sit them down and say, hey, this is a perfect opportunity to say, hey, we're not this stereotype that you think that we are. We're not these gangsters. We're not these thugs. We're writers and creatives and thought leaders and thinkers and social activists. Hey, come over and meet my crew over here, so and so. And so we were able to dissolve that a little bit and get at least one from each crew to come that way. But that's why we don't just, when I'm putting together a team of poets or a team of hip hop artists, I don't just pull them all from the same crew, because that would go against our mission statement to help bridge these neighborhoods within these large cities. So that's what goes on behind poetry versus hip hop. And then, of course, I started the breast cancer arm when my partner passed away 14 months ago, at the day of we're recording. So she passed away January 3rd of 2022. And I wasn't sure I wanted to bring poetry versus hip hop back, but so many people were like, no, it's not just a show. This is a evolving, life-changing community service aspect with a DJ, So I, was convinced to do it and got together a team to help me, because there are a lot of moving parts to poetry versus hip hop. And once I decided, okay, we're going to relaunch, we're going to upscale it a little bit, we're going to tick up a little bit, we're going to scale up a little bit. So we added the Breast Cancer Foundation arm to that. And we also added the Poetry versus Hip Hop Enterprising Award, because I believe in giving people their flowers while they're alive. So those are the things that behind poetry versus hip hop, and then everybody shows up in this great show and they're like, so yeah.
Well, this is just, it is so wonderful to learn about this. And I want to kind of dig into this aspect about the cross-cultural connections. It seems to me that there is such a need for this in so many ways. How do you think about it, approach it, work on it deliberately? Because many of us kind of throw up our hands. We say, boy, it would sure be great if we could cross these borders and boundaries and all be friends, but it's hard. So I don't know what to do. How do you do it?
Think about, has there ever been a time where, any time in your life, but I'm sure not, because you're so amazing and kind. I'm a little edgy. So think about, if there was ever a time when you've been misunderstood, or somebody judged you before getting to know you, or somebody made a comment or a microaggression against you without getting to know you. And that's happened to me my entire life. I'm adopted by white people. I grew up in a major city. I present Black, but I'm biracial. I'm also part of the LGBTQIA community. And so I have all of these facets and umbrellas that are amazing, like you say, superpowers and talents. And superpowers, talents, and part of my culture, but I get misread and misunderstood a lot of times. I deal with anxiety, I deal with depression, I deal with feeling overwhelmed, I deal with having to do everything on my own. I'm dealing with the loss and the mourning of my romantic partner and my business partner and my best friend. And so sometimes I can be misunderstood in ways, and I just wanted to create an event because I like throwing events. And entertainment is the top 5 things that people spend money on, right? It's travel, food, health and beauty, and entertainment, arts and entertainment. So I wanted to create a platform where a trans hip hop artist can be, quote, it's a friendly battle, so can battle with a self-proclaimed thug poet. And part of our requirements in poetry versus hip hop is that they hug, so that there is a human connection, because we've lost so much human connection. And that is so important to me. And I feel like every time someone has misjudged me, and I was just talking about this with my manager earlier today, anytime somebody has misjudged me, as soon as they get to know me or they have a conversation with me, they admit to it. They say, you know what? I really misjudged you. I thought you were a snob. I've had people misjudge me before doing poems. I remember one time, true story. I mean, I hate when people say that, like everything else is a lie, right?
Yeah.
No, but everything else I said was some BS. But one time, I was in Toronto and we did a tour in Buffalo, New York. And I remember walking to the venue, and it was a university, and we were going to perform in this theater. And I remember thinking this guy was cute. And I kind of looked at him. I had on one of my poofy dresses that I'm known for, polka dot, high heels. And I remember the guy kind of shooting me a glance like, like what she got to say? This is a cultural event. What's going to happen now? So I get in there, I do my poems, and he comes up to me afterwards and says, I did not expect that out of you. What did you expect? You don't even know me. You didn't even give him the opportunity to get to know you or to talk or anything. And so I'm exhausted of that. I'm exhausted of being misunderstood. That is not to say I haven't burnt a couple bridges in my day, but perfect, but
Yeah.
I'm saying that I'm perfect at all, but I really get exhausted about being misjudged. And I think people go through that a lot. And Poetry versus Hip Hop creates that platform where people can come express themselves freely without language barriers, without censorship, be themselves completely 100%, and, have a great time.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to come see one. I'm looking forward to
Please
seeing
come
one. I had the most. I mean, I'm trying to find the word. I'm not a poet. I should be a poet, so I can know words. But I had such a moving experience hearing you give some of your poems at a reading in Israel. What was it? We were there in Jerusalem, and you gathered a group, and we came over, and I remember we were in actually a tiny little room, crammed in almost like sardines in this little room, and you performed, and it was really amazing. How did you find your voice?
Trial and error isn't the right word. It's development, professional and personal development. I most, and I can't speak for everybody, but I started off as the angry, light-skinned, trying to prove I'm Black enough poet, and a lot of poets start off with, angry social political poems or really, really raunchy erotic poems. That has never been my lane. So I wrote about all the social challenges that I was facing growing up in the city of Detroit, not in the suburbs again, adopted by an all-white family, navigating that through public school, being called Oreo and Zebra, and being made fun of because I could read well. Like, what? How do you make fun of somebody for being able to read? Like, that's so funny. But so I just started writing about all these experiences, and then come to find out, even if people couldn't relate directly to that story, they definitely could relate to being misunderstood, or people not taking the time to get to know them, or any social challenges that they're facing, being Black, being pulled over by the police, being worried about their sons when they, go out on their own, when they become of age, when they start driving. My son is 28, so I worry about him and him running across the cops. He's got a smart mouth. I wonder where he got that from. So it's, all of those things, and all of those things came up for me, and this became a therapeutic way to talk to somebody without talking to somebody. I was always that little kid in middle school or elementary school, always telling my business to the other little kids who couldn't do anything for me. I should have been talking to a counselor or something like that. But I was just trying to figure out what was going on with me emotionally, and poetry and spoken word has been my way. And by no means, I don't want you or your audience or anybody watching this in the future to think that I take it lightly. I went and got my master's in creative writing. So I wanted to make sure that I understood the literary aspect, the publishing aspect. I wanted to make sure that I had books and that I had albums, and not just so that I could cast a wider net, but so that people that aren't familiar with spoken word can listen to it and be like, oh, this is palatable. I understand this. I tell, stories of growing up in childhood, and what it's like having a son and being estranged with him, and not being able to see my grandchildren. Yes, I have grandchildren, and all of those things. So there's so much to talk about, and the finance side, being an artist and being able to balance finances and now going viral and the internet. There's so much. So it's a lot, but it's a great way to get it out on paper and have that kind of therapeutic session with yourself that becomes very visceral.
You really are, in so many ways, an inspiration to other people. What is your superpower?
My superpower is taking a risk. So when I'm writing my poems, I try to leave it all on the paper or all on the stage. I take nothing with me. I tell all my secrets. And I also believe that you should offer a solution. That's one of my superpowers, is offering solution. And this is how I teach my students. I'm also a part-time professor at Clark Atlanta. So when I'm teaching people how to write poetry, if I was teaching you how to write poetry, even though you're an award-winning writer, I would say, Devin, pick something that's close to your chest, then narrow your scope, and then tell us not only what the problem is, tell us how to solve it. Even if solving it is fictional, that's fine. If you want to have dragons from Game of Thrones swoop in and, whisk you off, or, burn your leaves so you don't have to rake them in your yard, whatever the issue is. And all of the social political things that I talk about aren't all heavy. I have poems about my menstrual cycle, which is endometriosis is a really big thing, especially in Black women. And then I have poems about water bugs in the South, right? That's another huge thing. But it's also something that can be very scary if you're not used to it. And so I make these things light and funny, but I also give them political voice. So also I just had plastic surgery in December, and so I'm writing a new poem called "New Booty." Now that is a spinoff of one of Mos Def's old songs, right? And I know the title sounds funny, but me being me, so it's gonna start off a little light and funny, but then I'm gonna go left to social political and say, well, now that I have a new booty, maybe I'll be considered Black. Maybe I'll be less of the Black. Maybe I'll be less of the microaggression of the mixed girl. Maybe I won't be called white anymore. Those things. So because those are things that I struggle with. Those are the things that come up in my life, in my adult life. So my superpower is taking a risk, writing to the edge, and then going over it. And the best way to explain it is a good poem is like a thesis paper. You present a problem, and your thesis statement should tell people which way you're leaning, and then you support it and wrap it up.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Can you think of an example of a time when you took a risk and things turned out well? Maybe you were scared of that risk, you did it anyway, and it worked out. Can you think of an example?
Well, yes. So all of 22, it actually leads up, what's the word I'm looking for? It also kind of connects the dots on how I met you. So I gave myself all of 22 to be depressed. And not that I'm still not processing the grief or the things that I went through, but I gave myself all of 22 to eat, sleep, not do anything. If I had to go to work, I told myself if I had to go to work, I went to work. If I had a gig, I would show up for the gig. If I had a responsibility to show up, but then I gave myself permission to immediately go home and get in bed. I literally spent, can you imagine the amazing summer in Atlanta, Georgia, in bed, July 4th, in bed, Labor Day weekend, in bed, just not doing anything. So I did not want to commit suicide. I was just tired and I was exhausted. And I told myself, do not commit suicide. Just keep showing up for your life. Just keep going. Just wake up and go to the next day and go to the next day. So Labor Day weekend, I was invited last minute to come perform at the mayor's LGBT opening reception for Black Pride Weekend. So I don't know why it's split, but there's Pride Weekend, which is in October up here. I think it's Halloween weekend. And then there's Black holiday weekend, and it's Labor Day weekend. And I, of course, accepted the gig, and I said, you know what? Let's go all out. I got a dress made. I had my friend design a dress for me. I was really honored to be a part of this. I actually ran for office at the same time the current mayor ran for office. So we kind of crossed paths a little bit, and he remembered me, and I appreciated that. And I show up, I perform We Are the Women. And that was the only poem they commissioned me to do. I performed that in front of at least 1,000 people, right? We were in City Hall. This has never been done before. We were in City Hall, 1,000 people sitting and standing around, from the LGBTQIA community, elected officials, anybody you could think of was there. So I end the poem to a standing ovation. And I was very excited that I decided to get up and take that gig that day. I go upstairs, and that is where I run into Anat, my Israeli consulate general, and that is how I ended up meeting you. And she said, I was feeling good that day. I was feeling up, and I was like, oh hey, she was. I didn't know she was the consulate general. I was just complimenting her outfit. I was like, oh my God, you look great. You look so cute, blah, blah, blah. And she introduced herself and told me who she was. I was like, oh my God, Israel. I was like, that's amazing. She was like, yeah, I'm leaving in a couple of days, but I want to talk to you when you get back. When she got back, and I said, take me with you. She said, I might have an opportunity for you. And so that's how I ended up in Israel with you all after that. And had I not shown up for my life, had I not shown up that day, then none of this forthcoming would have happened. So I tell everybody, I have a lot of tattoos, but I have it tattooed on my wrist that says "Not Today." And I initially got "Not Today" on my wrist because there was an influx of middle school suicides when I was in grad school and doing substitute teaching to make ends meet. And it seemed like once a month, a child was taking their life from bullying or anxiety or depression. And as adults, we know that we're just taller children. And so if it's not addressed, if somebody doesn't help them along their way, if they don't teach them art or poetry or language or music or something to direct their emotions and feelings and then help get them a counselor, they just don't understand it. So I tell people, allow yourself time to grieve and be sad, but show up for your life, because if you don't, you never know what could unfold positively.
Yeah. That is such a good message. Such a good message. And I think the pandemic created a kind of an echo pandemic of depression, anxiety, and stress that will have ripple effects for a long time as people struggle with that. So I appreciate that counsel. As you're thinking about risk-taking, especially in your writing, but broadly speaking, as you say, take risk, go right to the edge, and then maybe tip over. How would you coach someone to develop that ability in a safe way? It sounds so scary. It sounds so dangerous. Help us understand how to do that in a way that's constructive, productive, edgy, fun, but safe. Is there a safe way to take risk in this way?
I don't think so, because we're all artists, and so we're sensitive about our shit, as Erykah Badu said, right? So you're gonna be judged. You can't avoid it. You can't avoid it, and not but. You can't avoid it. And if you take the risk, if you feel good about what you're doing, you go to bed satisfied. You go to bed well rested. You go to the bank and cash the check when people say, come and speak, or become a keynote speaker, or, hey, we want to have your books in our school or our university or our library or Barnes and Noble. That's you. You cannot. One of the things that the death of my partner taught me, and I learned it late, but at least I learned it. You know how your parents used to tell you, you can't worry about what other people say about you, and you're like, yeah, sure, but these are my peers. Like their opinion matters. It really doesn't. It really does. And I mean that in a positive way. I don't want people to think like, oh, it does matter. Of course, you want the affirmation of your partner and your lover and your friends and your best friend, of course, but the decisions are ultimately up to you. So if you're taking a risk and doing something that you want to do, that you are steadfast, 10 toes to the ground on, and you decided to take this risk and everybody's against it, you got to decide what you want to do. So there's not really a safe way to take a risk. You just have to be absolutely sure that's what you want to do, regardless of the outcome, regardless if it goes left or right. If it goes, positively goes to the right, then awesome, that's great, reap the benefits. If it goes left, be prepared for it to go left and learn how to pivot and navigate back onto the track that you initially wanted. I don't think there is a safe way. And unfortunately, anxiety and PTSD, especially from the pandemic, where people were found out that they really were just behaving around their partners. They really just had a routine. Okay, we get up, we have coffee together, we're off to work, we send a couple I love you text, hey babe, shoot selfie, I miss you, I love you, come back home, you watch TV, you make dinner, you go to bed. That's behavior. That's not necessarily human connection unless you were lucky enough to have that actual human connection. And then bring in your children about it, bring in your children, and you didn't see them for 8 or 10 hours a day. Now you have to have human connection with them as well. So I don't know if there is a safe way to take risks, but I have a new to me slogan. It's not a new slogan. It's new to me. You only have one go. So do what you're going to do every single day and do it big, bold, or if you're not a big and bold person, do it in your safe space and make sure that is something you want to do, but you only have one go. There is no putting it off. There's no putting it off. So take the risk.
That's great counsel. Great counsel.
Just imagine.
So Sheba,
what was the quote from I'm trying to think. What was I'm gonna mess it up. Maybe in your edit you can find it. What was the quote from Coach Carter? It's actually a quote from Mandela. It's actually Mandela's quote. It's not the fear of failure, it's the fear of success. It's something like, I'm totally messing it up, but it's not the fear. It's Mandela's quote, and it's not the fear of failure. It's the fear of success, and then having to live up to and maintain that success, whatever that success is.
Yeah.
Emotionally, personal.
I think that is a problem for a lot of us. In reaching our potential. That's a great insight. Sheba, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you would take the time to do this. I am so grateful to know you. I am excited to have you perform at Supercrowd 23. Thank you. Before we wrap up, would you take a minute and tell people where they can buy your books and your albums and how they can find about the next performances, the next hip hop versus poetry events, et cetera, et cetera. Take all the time you want to tell us all the things we need to know about connecting with you, getting your stuff.
So I am a parallel universe of brands. So we have the Queen Sheba brand, which is everything me performing anywhere, with or without poetry versus hip hop. So Queen Sheba as a poet, a keynote speaker, a motivational speaker, a professor, an author, and a DJ. Actually happen to DJ as well. So Queen Sheba, you can find me on all social medias as the Queen Sheba, THE, Queen spelled regular, and Sheba is SHEBA. So the Queen Sheba. You can put that in any social media and YouTube. And my website is thequeensheba.live, like live performance. Poetry versus hip hop. So Queen Sheba, if you need to find me or you need information or for my book. So I have one book at the time of this recording, which is International Women's Day. Thank you so much, Devin. I appreciate that. March 8th. So at the time of this recording, I have one book out that's on Amazon. It's called From Foster Care to Fame. And my last name is Rem, R-E-M, like the group. My first name is Beth Sheba, like in the Bible. That's how you can find me on Facebook if you're over 40. So, which I happen to be. So that is not 40 shaming at all. So my students are always talking about, we don't get space back. I'm like, whatever, in your TikTok and Instagram, right?
Yeah.
So right at the moment, I have one book out called From Foster Care to Fame, and those are poems and short stories. As of April 1st, just in a couple weeks, I will be dropping my second book of poetry. I was gonna say poems. My second book of poetry called Clemency, Poems to Help You Accept the Apologies You Will Never Receive. And then this summer, my goal is June. And actually, I'm on my way to meet a new publisher now, which I'm excited about. So my goal is June. I have my very first memoir coming out. I'm very excited about that. It is called The Day I Almost Died in DR, How to Leave Your Body and Toxic Relationship Behind, which actually Susan helped me come up with that subtitle. So look at all of us connected after Israel. Is so great. So you can pre-order The Day I Almost Died in DR on my Instagram page. Just go to the link tree and it's there. My website has both of the poetry books up there. You can order them from there, or you can find them on Amazon. And of course, well, I'm not sure about my publishing deal, but I'm sure all of them will be on Amazon by June 1st. April 1st will be Clemency. Long story short is already out, and The Day I Almost Died in DR will be out in Juneteenth, around the time that hopefully you'll be coming up here. So all of my albums you can find on iTunes, Tidal, Spotify. If you put in Queen Sheba Poet, album, poetry, I pop right up in Google, but I'm on all streaming platforms. I have a brand new album that just came out this past August, and it's called The F It Pill. It's not called The F It Pill, but I don't want to curse on your show. It's called The F It Pill. Basically in alignment with all the things I said, just F it, just do it, just go, just be, just live. Don't leave anything, don't live with any regrets. And so the parallel universe of poetry versus hip hop, which is a lot easier to explain. If you want to come to any of the shows, our website is poetryversushiphop.live, again, like live show or .com, either one it comes up. And it has our schedule on there, and you can come to any show. Each venue has their own ticketing platform, so you may be directed to that venue, but we always keep it up to date with the dates that we have coming up. Our big 50 years in hip hop plus our 8-year anniversary will be at Center Stage in Atlanta, Georgia. It holds 800 people. We would love to have every single one of you there. It's definitely worth traveling for. And Poetry versus Hip Hop only has 2 social media, well, 3 if you count Facebook. So we have Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and it's Poetry VS and Hip Hop. And that's really about it. So our website and then our 3 social that's where we're at.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Sheba. Thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us today. We wish you every success in the great, inspiring work that you're doing to help people connect across communities and to find that humanity in each other.
Thank you so much, Devin, for having me. I look forward to interviewing you one day.
Oh, thank you. Now let's do some good. Thank you for tuning in to the Superpowers for Good show. Twice each week, we host changemakers who share their impact, insights, and superpowers. Don't miss another episode. Subscribe today at superpowersforgood.com. That's superpowers, 4, good.com. Be super empowered. Get your copy of the book, Superpowers for Good, as an ebook, audiobook, paperback, or hardcover edition via your favorite online retailer. Interested in having me speak to your company, organization, or association? Visit devinthorpe.com. Then let's talk. Now, keep using your superpowers for good. Together, we can reverse climate change, improve global health, and eradicate poverty.